Hello and welcome to our first ever virtual Trash Talk. My name is Audrey and I'm a program coordinator with UW Recycling. Today I have our two other program coordinators here with me as well.
Hi, my name is Madeline Schroeder.
Hey there, I'm Adam Fain.
And today we are going to talk about what happens to waste on the UW Seattle campus and in the greater Seattle area. We also will discuss resources and ways that you can not only sort your waste correctly and divert it from the landfill, but also reduce the amount of waste you create in the first place. This presentation has been pre-recorded, but we will have an opportunity to answer questions live after the presentation. So to start off, let's talk a little bit about what UW Recycling is. We are a department on campus that has four main purposes. Primarily, we collect waste on campus with our own fleet of collection trucks. We also manage contracts with other vendors that collect waste on campus. We provide and update waste infrastructure, so every time that you see a garbage, recycling, or compost container on campus, we probably were responsible for putting it there. And then lastly, we conduct outreach through presentations and events just like this one. So why do we at UW put such an emphasis on recycling? Well, we can break down our motivations into four categories. First, reducing and diverting waste benefits the environment because using recycled material reduces the amount of new material we must make and therefore saves resources. Also, diverting waste saves money. Garbage costs $149 per ton, compost costs $60 per ton, and recycling is free. So it's over twice as much money to send material to the landfill than it is to compost the same amount of that material. And besides saving the campus money, waste diversion fits well with UW's culture. There actually is an executive order that states we must, quote, strive to be models of environmental stewardship and sustainability, and increase the reuse, recycling, and composting of these materials, including food waste. So it's literally written into the UW culture that recycling and composting is important to us. Our last motivation, and perhaps the most compelling, is simply that in Seattle, recycling is the law. The city of Seattle has banned recyclable materials from the landfill, including paper and yard waste, cans, bottles, jars, containers, and food waste. So how are we doing in terms of waste diversion? So I've already used that term a few times, but let's go ahead and define what waste diversion actually is. When we talk about waste diversion, we mean all material that we do not send to the landfill. So everything that we recycle, compost, or donate for resale becomes our waste diversion rate. The 2019 waste diversion rate was 61%, meaning we only send 39% of our waste to the landfill. The city of Seattle's waste diversion rate is roughly 60%, so we're ahead by just a little bit. We are always working to reduce the amount of material that we send to the landfill through increasing access to recycling and compost containers and conducting waste audits on campus.
In 2018, UW commissioned a waste characterization study through an outside consulting company. Waste was collected from a bunch of different sites all across campus and sorted into more than 80 material categories. The results from the study gave us a huge amount of detail into what material is thrown away and where it ends up on campus. So now we not only know our waste diversion rate, but we also know exactly what our waste is made up of. If the UW combined all garbage, mixed recycling, and food waste, then sorted it perfectly, 44% would be compostable, 27% is recyclable, 26% is legitimate garbage, and 3% is separated recyclable. The UW only recycles 63% of the recyclable materials and only composts 46% of the compostable items. So as a result of this study, we know that we have a lot of potential room to improve our programs and that putting an emphasis on compost education could make a big impact. We also know that if we sorted everything 100% correctly, meaning everything that ended up in the correct bin, our waste diversion rate could be 83%. It's also important to acknowledge that the waste diversion rate isn't the only number we care about. When we think about the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle, waste diversion represents recycle. Waste diversion does not tell us about the material we reused or the material we did not throw away in the first place, which are more important.
Okay, I have a little bit of a pop quiz for everybody. Don't worry, it's not graded. But the question is, when do you think UW started recycling? If you're watching, go ahead and write your guesses in the comments. Gonna give you a few seconds for that. There are no bad guesses, so you're among friends. Go ahead and guess whatever you think it is. Let's see here. I think that's ample time. So the UW has a 50-year history of recycling. So if you said 1970, you're correct. In 1970, students held the world's first trash-in, where they brought material to the Student Union building and requested that manufacturers take these materials back and be remade into new products. In 1971, students started collecting roughly 2,800 pounds of recyclables per week, and they took them to the transfer station with the help from the physical plant. So we've been gradually adding to and improving our waste diversion program since then. Okay, now the moment we've all been waiting for, we're going to dive into recycling here. And so I'm just going to start with the basics of recycling and the materials that make up the largest chunk of our waste diversion rate. So let's start by talking about plastics. You may have heard that the plastics you recycle are kind of based on the number, but in Seattle and on the UW campus, that's not exactly true. So we recycle based mostly on shape. So cups, jugs, tubs, and bottles are going to be the most recyclable plastics. Other than plastics, we also recycle paper, cardboard, cans, and cartons. We'll touch on some additional resources to help you sort your recyclables in just a bit. But that's just kind of the basics for now. I do want to touch on a really important point. If you have an item that you're not sure is recyclable and you don't have time to look it up or ask us or email us, it's okay to throw it out. Just remember the phrase, when in doubt, throw it out. We would much rather lose that item to the garbage than risk contaminating other waste streams like recycling or compost. All right, now that we know that what we can recycle, it's really important to talk about how we can recycle properly. Recyclable items need to be clean, we need them to be empty, and we need them to be dry before they go in the bin so that food residue and other contaminants don't ruin the entire load of recycling.
All right, thank you, Adam, for talking about the basics of recycling and how to recycle right. So after you place your clean items in the bin and the bin is emptied into a collection vehicle, your items are taken either to a transfer station or directly to a material recovery facility for sorting. Items are sorted on a conveyor belt into different materials and then baled together. Manufacturing companies purchase bales to make into new goods. Roughly a third of Seattle's recyclables stay in Seattle to be made into new products. 38% stays in the Northwest and North America, and 34% is sent to Asia. It's interesting to know that the US used to send more recycling to other countries, but changes over acceptable levels of contamination have severely limited the amount of material purchased by other countries. So here is what a transfer station looks like, the first stop for recycling and garbage that our crew collects from campus. This is inside the North Transfer Station in the Wallingford neighborhood of Seattle. Transfer stations are locations where collection vehicles drop off their waste. Material does not stay at a transfer station for long, however. Large loading vehicles like the one that you can see in this picture will push material down through a large hole in the floor of the transfer station. Garbage will fall into train car boxes that are stationed below. These boxes are attached to a compactor, and then when full, a truck transports the different wastes to the rail yard. Recycling travels by truck to material recovery facilities. So the next step in recyclable materials journey is going to a material recovery facility, also known as MRF for short. So MRFs sort recyclables into different categories so that they can be sold and made into new goods. We'll go ahead and watch this clip from a material recovery facility in Philadelphia. Facilities in Seattle look very similar to this one. If you are interested in visiting MRFs in Seattle, tours are available by reaching out to the resource recovery companies that operate them.
I also wanted to touch on that there are plenty of items that you can recycle, but you wouldn't want them to put them in your normal recycling bin. On the UW campus, we can recycle all sorts of special items, including plastic film, styrofoam blocks and peanuts, hardbound books, e-media, and printer cartridges. More information on arranging service for any of these items can be found on our website, uwrecycling.com. I also wanted to mention that while we are talking about styrofoam, I wanted to give you a quick look into the styrofoam recycling process. Styrofoam cannot be placed in the normal recycling bin because it requires a very specialized recycling process. Foam pieces are loaded onto a conveyor belt and fed into a machine that grinds them up and compacts them into dense bricks of material. This compacted foam is then pelletized, and the pellets are sold to manufacturers. They will turn them into new plastic products like picture frames and furniture. If you encounter hard-to-recycle items like styrofoam or batteries, our disposal guide is a helpful tool. Visit uwrecycling.com, click on our disposal guide, and search or scroll through our items list. However, if you have hard-to-recycle items but you are no longer on campus, you can check your city or county website for a disposal guide. For instance, the City of Seattle has a great resource called Where Does It Go? This is a search tool that includes tons of items and detailed options for what to do with them.
Okay, now that everybody has some really great resources for recycling, it's time to move on to compost. In Seattle, it's just as important to compost as it is to recycle. And we know from our waste characterization study that our composting skills have a little bit of room to improve. So kind of getting into compost, it consists mostly of food scraps, including eggshells, meat, bones, and food soiled paper, including pizza boxes. Compostable serviceware like utensils, plates, cups, and to-go containers are also common in Seattle. However, some food containers aren't compostable. Even if a container looks like it's made out of compostable paper, it still might be lined with plastic. So the one way to know for sure is if the container actually says compostable. Another good hint is if the container has a number 7 with the letters PLA underneath. PLA stands for polylactic acid, and that's made out of corn. So that means the PLA is compostable. To make things simple, the vast majority of serviceware on campus is compostable. Restaurants in Seattle are also required to provide recyclable or compostable serviceware and to-go containers. So it's really important to read the labels and packaging carefully. So you might be thinking, how do these items turn into compost? Compost is actually picked up from our vendor Cedar Grove from the UW campus and brought to their facility in Maple Valley, where contaminants like metal utensils and plastic bags are sorted out. Compostable material is then shredded, mixed with organic material, and made into long rows, where it's kept under cover to maintain a high temperature. Once the material is decomposed, usually after about 3 months, compost is sold and used to grow more food. This makes the compost process what we call a closed-loop system. We're really lucky to be in Seattle because Seattle is kind of on the cutting edge of composting our waste, but many places in the US don't have this option. So why is it so important for us to compost? And the reason why, we kind of have to look at where our waste would go otherwise. It would go to the landfill. And landfills are specifically designed for storing materials, not for decomposition. The conditions inside a landfill create an environment with very little oxygen and water, which results in waste decomposing very slowly and produces an abundance of methane, which isn't great for the environment. So if you look at the slide, look at the picture on the left, those carrots were taken out of the landfill after 10 years, which is a really great example of what happens to our waste. Nothing in the landfill. Had those carrots been sent to Cedar Grove, they would have been compost after about 3 months. So compost does a lot of really great things for us. Compost as an amendment restarts the soil ecosystem, and it restores functions in soils disturbed during development, which is very common in Seattle. Tilling in compost immediately reduces soil compaction and increases stormwater infiltration rates. This means that when it rains, soil that contains compost will absorb and hold on to water. Soil without compost can't hold on to water, and water runs off quickly, bringing pollutants with it. Compost also feeds and creates habitat for beneficial soil organisms, and this returns this ecosystem in degraded soils, so they begin to function again more like native soils.
So after we sort out our recyclable and compostable wastes, there's really not a whole left over for the garbage bin. Most commonly, you might find items like snack wrappers, broken glass, animal feces, disinfectant wipes, and gloves in your garbage bin. It's also important to note that any paper towel that you use with cleaning supplies needs to be placed in the trash. So where does our trash go? Trash from the UW is put on a train and hauled over 300 miles to Arlington, Oregon, where our landfill is. This train runs 6 days per week, is a mile long, and double stacked. It carries an estimated 18 million pounds of waste each trip. And 18 million pounds of waste is kind of incomprehensible. So to give you an idea of just how much waste that is, if you took all of the containers on that train and you stacked them up end to end, they would be taller than 11 times the height of the Columbia Tower, which is the tallest building in Seattle. So that is just an insane amount of waste that we send to the landfill every single day.
So the last component of our waste diversion rate is everything that we donate and resell. On campus, we have UW surplus. When a department doesn't need something anymore, they send it to UW surplus. The surplus store is normally open every Tuesday from noon to 6 p.m. However, it is closed at the moment, but it has everything from affordable furniture, computer equipment, and school supplies. They even have had submarines. Now that we've looked into how to appropriately handle waste after we make it, let's take a step back and think about the steps leading up to the moment we get rid of something. This right here is the hierarchy of waste. Starting at the bottom, we have littering. Anything is better than littering. Then we have recovery of energy from landfilling waste and disposal without recovery. Then we reach recycling. As you can see, recycling does not hold the top spot on the hierarchy because it is not the best way to manage material. Even better than recycling are the two other R's, reduce and reuse. We want to lower the amount of waste we generate and reuse materials as much as possible before sending them to be recycled. Ultimately, the best way to manage materials is to make less material in the first place. We can do this by avoiding and refusing waste. This is a complicated but essential step to sustainably managing waste.
So if we're focusing on waste reduction, here are some simple tips to reduce the amount of waste that you produce. Use reusable items instead of disposable and avoid packaging as much as possible. Also, consider buying local and avoiding online shopping to reduce shipping waste. So if you want to reduce your waste on campus, both the Green Office Certification and Green Lab Certification programs from UW Sustainability emphasize waste reduction, as well as the campus-wide paper reduction committee. If you're hosting events on or off campus, check out the green event guides put together by UW Sustainability. They have some really great tips on there.
And so that concludes our first ever virtual trash talk. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope that you learned something new. Of course, we're always here to help. Here's just a sample of the many things that we can do for you. We really would enjoy if you invited us to provide virtual waste sorting and waste reduction training for your team. You can reach out to us for help with waste-related research projects. We love working with different student groups and classes across campus. And we also teach guest labs and quiz sections and would love to be guest speakers in your classroom, virtual classroom, I guess. Also, let us know if you found a spot on campus that needs a new recycling or compost bin. We're always happy to help. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and write them in the comments section right now, and we'll pull up a live Q&A session soon. If you come up with more questions later, feel free to shoot us an email, and we'll be able to help you with whatever you need. So thank you so much, and bye for now.
All right, yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks again for having us.
Okay, so we're going to get started with a question from Michelle. Michelle asked, will recyclables that get into the landfill ever get sorted out at some point? And that's a really good question. And unfortunately, no. Once something goes into the landfill, it's going to stay there forever. And then landfills are sealed up, so nothing can escape. There's no leachate, and they just sit there and nothing ever happens to them. So that's why we don't like sending things to the landfill, because they will never become anything else useful ever again. Let's see. And pull up some other comments from our virtual trash talk. Oh, we have a question from Gabby. And Gabby says, if I don't live in Seattle, is my recycling list the same? And the answer is, it's probably pretty similar, but recycling infrastructure varies from city to city and from county to county. So it's important that you check your local city website and your county website to see if their list is any different than Seattle. And then we have a question from Adam. What about lids and caps? So we get that question a lot, and there's a pretty easy way to tell if you can recycle a lid or a cap. If it is larger than 3 inches in diameter, so about the size of your index finger, then it's okay to go into the recycling bin. And if it's any smaller than that, when it lands in the recycling sorting facility, it will just fall through the machinery and end up as garbage. So it's important that if it's smaller than that, it should go into the garbage. And another thing about lids and caps that's interesting is that if you have a bottle that is the same material as the lid, so say you have a plastic bottle that's empty and you have a plastic lid, you can go ahead and screw that lid back on the bottle and put the whole thing into the recycling, just as long as the bottle is empty. Let's see. We have a question from UW Sustainability. What are the main items that get missorted on campus? Let's see. Things that should go into the recycling or composting but regularly are thrown in the wrong bin. So something that comes to mind pretty quickly is coffee cups on campus. UW does a really great job of making sure that almost all of our serviceware, so cups, plates, forks, knives, to-go containers, almost all of those materials are compostable, so they all should go into the compost bin. But if you have a cup that you got at a Starbucks on campus and a cup that you got from the Starbucks on the Ave, the one on the Ave is probably recyclable and the one on campus is compostable, but they look really similar. So that's definitely an item that ends up in the wrong bin often. And to avoid that, it's really important that you look all over on the cup and look and see if it says compostable or what it's made out of to figure out which bin it should go into. Okay, and we have a question from Delwin. I work in a lab on the UW campus. We get lots of reagents in glass bottles. We are not allowed to recycle the glass. We have to throw it away. Why can't clean glass bottles like these be recycled when beverage bottles can be recycled? Ooh, that's a really good question. Let me go to my team and see if they have an answer for that. Let's see what they have to say. Okay, so if you have glass bottles that used to have somewhat hazardous materials inside of them, we don't want to send those to the recycling vendor because it might look hazardous to them. And also different bottles, even though they look like the same material that beverage bottles are made out of, they also might be made out of a slightly different type of glass that actually is not recyclable on the same recycling machinery. So that's what we would say about why certain lab glass would need to go into the garbage instead of the recycling. Okay. Let's see. So on our watch party, I think we already answered this question, but I just want to talk about it a little bit more. Somebody asked about the difference between biodegradable and compostable. And it's often a misconception on product labeling. Something will say that it's biodegradable, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it can go into our compost bin. And that's because biodegradable simply means that it will break down into smaller and smaller pieces, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will become compost. So yeah, biodegradable does not mean compostable. And if you want to put something in the compost bin, it needs to say compostable. But of course, if you have an item and you're not sure exactly which bin it should go in, you can always send us an email and we'll be able to help you out. Oh, and our email is recycle@uw.edu. Pretty easy to remember. Oh, we have another question from Adam. Adam says, should cardboard pizza boxes go into the recycling? This is another item that commonly is confused on campus. And even though it's cardboard, it cannot go into the recycling because if you have a pizza box, it's probably covered with like little bits of cheese or it's greasy. So then it counts as food soiled paper. And any food soiled paper product needs to go into the compost bin. So if you put it into the recycling bin, the oil and food probably has damaged it so that it's no longer able to be fully recycled. So pizza boxes go into the compost. Thanks for that question, Adam. And we have a question from Pooja, and Pooja says, is it possible to recycle or compost disinfecting wipes, paper towels used for cleaning, and PPE? And that's a really good question, especially for our current situation. And unfortunately, if you have a disinfectant wipe, you don't want to put that into the compost or the recycling. It needs to go into the garbage because it probably has chemicals and cleaning materials on it that would not be good for the compost, and it probably cannot decompose anyways. And then also, even if you have something like a paper towel that you use, even a cleaner like vinegar on it, we don't want to put that into the compost because even vinegar can damage the microorganisms that are really important to make the compost process happen. So yeah, anything that we use for cleaning up or disinfecting, we want that to go into the garbage, including rubber gloves and things like that. All right, now we have a question from Chelsea. Chelsea says, do we have ways to recycle plastic film on campus? Many things in the laboratory are packaged in plastic film to keep them sterile, and we definitely have ways to recycle plastic film on campus. Our website, so if you go to uwrecycling.com, there is a section in our disposal guide on plastic film, and it has a list of all of the different plastic film toters that you can take plastic film to. There are approximately 20 toters available on campus, mostly at building loading docks, and any plastic film generated on campus can go into those toters. We also provide self-service cardboard collection boxes for plastic film. So if your lab generates a lot of plastic film, you can request one of those boxes from us. We'll send it to you in campus mail, and then you can collect your plastic film there. And then it's up to you to then take that bin and empty it into the plastic film toter. And I see back on our on our watch party post, we have another question from Michelle, and Michelle is asking about paper shreddings. And paper shreddings are a tough one. Michelle says, I have heard you need to bag them up and then dispose of them at a special facility. I'm not so sure about that. All I know is that you cannot put any bagged recyclables into your recycling bin at home in Seattle anymore. And we also do not want to put shredded paper into the recycling because the same reason that small plastic bottle caps can't be recycled, just paper shreddings are so small that once it gets to the recycling facility, it just falls through the machinery and it can't actually be collected and remade into new materials. I have heard that it is okay to compost them, and we do have a paper vendor on campus that will accept them if they're bagged. So you can't put them bagged in your recycling bin at home, but if you go through a special vendor on campus, then it is okay for them to be bagged. That's a really tricky one. Yeah, so I'll leave that there for now. And if you would like any more additional information about paper shredding, feel free to shoot us an email and we can connect you with the vendor and provide you with some more information on that. Okay, and then we have a question from Gabby about broken furniture disposal. And if you are on campus and you have any furniture that was purchased with university funds, then it's important that you do not just put that broken furniture into the garbage or take it off of campus. It's important that it goes to UW surplus. So any material that was bought with university funds, whether it's working or not, needs to end up heading to surplus. And you can visit their website and fill out a form telling them what you have, and then they'll come and collect it from you, or you can take it to them. And they have all of the correct recycling containers to handle all types of different wastes. And then if you have broken furniture and you are no longer on campus, as most of you probably are not, you can go ahead and take that material to city transfer stations. Right now, they might not all be open or operating at 100% due to safety concerns, but when they are open and operating fully, that's the best place to take your broken furniture. Okay, let's see. Do we have any additional questions? Just checking out our comments from our virtual trash talk to double check that we got everybody's questions. And I don't see any more at the moment. And let's see. So I think we're going to wrap up this live session, but if you do have any additional questions, you can go ahead and keep commenting them on our previous watch party posts. And yeah, so we will definitely be able to get back to you with that. Also, if you are interested in learning more about the waste world, we have 2 really neat presentations coming up. Next week on the, let's see, I think it's the 28th, we are hosting Heather Trim from Zero Waste Washington, and she's going to talk about what Zero Waste Washington does, as well as recent legislation impacting recycling and waste in general. She's really full of a lot of different information and is a wonderful speaker, so we're looking forward to that. And then also on, let's see, I think it is May 7th, we have a presentation from Susan Tommen of the Compost Manufacturer Alliance, and she's got a wonderful presentation prepared for us as well. So yeah, check out our Facebook page for further information about all of those events, and yeah, keep the questions coming, or email us at recycle@uw.edu, and we will be happy to help you out. So thank you all for attending, and we hope that you learned something new. Bye.